this is James here with the Oracle Outlook for the week starting August the 5th, 2019. Thanks so much for tuning in and joining me for this week's video reading. But before I get into the reading, I first want to start off by acknowledging my new subscribers. Over the course of the last few weeks, I've had a number of new viewers subscribe to the channel. So if you happen to be one of those people who recently subscribed, I want to take this moment to officially welcome you to the channel and thank you for taking that step to subscribe. It means the world to me when people create a little bit of space in their lives, their busy lives no less, for me and the content that I post to the channel. So thank you. But as I always say, whether you are a subscriber or a long-time regular viewer, I can never do what I do on this side of the camera without any of you out there tuning in and watching. So I want to thank each and every one of you for your continued support of the channel and for the encouragement that you all give me for the content that I post to the channel. So thank you one and all. So this week I'm continuing to work with the weekly spread that I've been sharing in this space over the last few weeks. It's gotten some wonderful feedback and response, and I want to give a special shout out to Rita, who recently hit me up through email sharing with me the recent weekly spread reading that she did. So I enjoyed getting to see the cards that turned up for her because she used Lenormand and how she went about interpreting them. So thank you, Rita, for sharing that. But thank you for those of you who said that you were willing to give the weekly spread a try. So one of the things that I like to do when I work with a new spread is I like to try it out with all the cartomancy systems that I work with. So over the time that I've been working with the weekly spread in this space, I've used Lenormand and I used Gypsy Witch cards last week. This week I want to work with a tarot deck because I found the spread in a tarot book. So this week the deck that's going to be assisting me with the weekly spread is the CBD Tarot de Marseille. The CBD is for Conver, Ben-Dov. The deck was created by the late Dr. Yoav Ben-Dov, and then it was acquired by US Game Systems Incorporated. So you can find the deck through their distribution channel. So again, I'm working with Tarot de Marseille, specifically the CBD Tarot. And now that I've set things up, let's get to the table and take a closer look at the cards that are going to be making up this week's weekly spread. And here we are with the cards on the table. I'm going to take a few moments to shuffle the deck. And as I shuffle the deck, I'm focusing on my intention for these weekly general readings. And that is for the information, for the insight, for the guidance and advice that is going to be most helpful and beneficial as we move through the upcoming week. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and cut the deck. Now fan the cards out. And so now, because I'm working with the weekly spread, I'm going to be looking for 7 cards in the fan that are getting my attention. All right, so now I'm going to take the remainder of the deck up. I'm going to put that to one side. So now I'm going to count back. I have 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's my check to make sure I have the right number of cards. And so now if you're new to seeing the weekly spread being laid out, gets laid out like this. Each card represents one day in the upcoming week. So the first 3 cards go at the top. Like so. And because I read starting off on Monday, so the first card is Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. So for me, these could represent individual themes for the day, but because they also form a row, they could be talking about something about how the week starts off with those 3 days in terms of an overall event if we read the cards together, right? So that's something I may feel inclined to do based on the cards. Now the next card, card 4, goes in the middle. So this would be Thursday, but it also can represent the heart of the spread. So this could be a central theme or issue or something that we're being asked to focus on for the week. And then the final 3 cards go beneath card 4. And they represent, if this is Thursday, this is going to be Friday, and then the final 2 cards would represent the weekend. So if we're talking about the beginning of the week here, the beginning to the middle of the week, this would be the end of the week to the weekend. Right? And we would read this row the same way. Right? We could look at the individual themes or energies of the day represented by the individual cards, or read them as a row for something that could happen over the course of the entire weekend. Right? So those are some possibilities. Other possibilities could be that we could read the card starting off the reading with the card beneath it. So this could be read as a pair. Then the middle column could be read as another line that may be at the heart of the matter, considering that this is the heart of the layout. So this could be something at the heart of the matter. And then these 2 cards could also be read as a pair. Right? So I mentioned that in case you want to try this on your own. In the past, I've done this reading with Gypsy Witch cards and Lenormand cards. So I talk about these different configurations because even though I found this spread in the tarot book, I like working with it using different systems. And so some of those systems you are encouraged to work with combinations and pairings, things like that. So if you want to give it a go with a different system, those are some possibilities for you. And so I could do some of those with the Tarot de Marseille if I feel inclined based on the cards. And if I feel a need to kind of pair them, combine them, I will be led to do that, and I will do it. Okay, so now taking a look at the card starting off the reading for Monday, we have, okay, so here we have the Emperor. So the Emperor is a major arcana card, so this card carries some weight in a reading. That's how I tend to look at the majors. And so we're starting off the week on an important note. So the Emperor can represent 2 things. For me, the first thing I think about power, I think about control, I think about order, structure, discipline. So this could be a week where we may need to be exercising a greater sense of control, a greater sense of order, employing some structure and being disciplined, right? Because those are all characteristics or trait of the Emperor for me, right? So this could be about personal power and how we use our personal power this week. In another light, this card can represent a male authority figure. So there may be an issue having to do with a boss, a supervisor, somebody who's in a position of authority if we put it in the context of work or business. If you're self-employed, then this would be talking about you being the head of your own business. So there may be something about maybe creating a greater sense of structure around your self-employment venture. And if it's not having to do with a male authority figure in the working or business sense, then this could be, in the personal sense, this could be someone's father or a father figure, because the Emperor can represent fathers and father figures. Or if you are married, then this could represent your spouse. right? Because this would represent an important man or a significant man or a man who has a major role or part in your life. Now, the interesting thing to note is that he's looking to the left, so he's looking outside of the line, right? So this could be maybe as a reaction to something that happened in the previous week, right? So we're carrying maybe some information or possibilities from the previous week into this week. So maybe starting the week off as a result of something that happened the week before, we're needing to apply some control or exert some control, needing to react and respond with maybe some discipline or some structure. It's making me feel like, how can we be more ordered and how can we be more disciplined starting the week off? You know, what in our lives do we need to get under control? What do we need to get in order? You know, how can we be more disciplined? Right, so I'm seeing all that with the Emperor. So now let's take a look at the card that represents Tuesday. And here we have, ooh, interesting. So now here we have another major arcana card. So this is the Hermit. And so Tuesday has a theme where there's talking about a timeout or a withdrawal, because the Hermit is all about taking a time out, withdrawal, removing yourself from a situation, right? And it would involve a brief period of time. Now, because the Hermit is carrying a lantern, for me, this is a card that talks about, you know, shedding light on the situation, or that we are seeking some kind of wisdom or enlightenment. So Tuesday could be a day where we are seeking some kind of wisdom, some kind of enlightenment. We're seeking some kind of guidance or counsel, because this card can represent a counselor. You know, and I look at the lantern, like I said, as shedding light or a guiding light. But it could also be a day to step back. You know, maybe looking at the situation from a different perspective. Now, if I put the card down and we go with the story that's being presented with the Emperor, like I talked about. So let's say that the Emperor is talking about, you know, how can we seek a greater sense of order, control, or discipline or structure in our lives. Then the Hermit would say, this is based on past or prior experience, right? Because the Hermit can also represent wisdom gained through experience. And the fact that the Hermit is behind the Emperor, right? So this would be about wisdom gained from a past experience, right? And because the Hermit is standing behind the Emperor's chair or the Emperor's throne, that could be support. So how would the wisdom gained from a past experience support you now going forward, right? And that's because, again, the Hermit is looking at the Emperor. Now, it could also be like if we are seeking a greater sense of order and gaining some kind of control over our lives, and it could be we seek the counsel of someone who has experience in whatever it is that we are trying to accomplish, right? In other words, somebody who's been there, done that. And this person is going to play a supportive role, a guide, as we are seeking that control, that order, that structure, right? So there's a couple of ways of looking at it. It could be gaining wisdom or experience from the past, and how can that support us going forward, or that whatever it is that we are trying to accomplish, we are seeking the counsel or the guidance of somebody who's had experience or has experience in that arena, that particular area, or that aspect of life. But because there are two major arcana cards on the table so far, whatever this is for us, it's going to have some kind of significance, because majors talk about important issues, or they highlight, and I'm playing on the lantern, or they highlight important events. So that's how I would look at the Emperor and the Hermit so far. So now let's take a look at the next card in the reading. And here we have, okay, so here we have the Ace of Wands. So now the Ace of Wands for me can represent new work or new business. Wands is a suit for me that can represent work or business. So again, this would fit the context where I talked about the Emperor could represent a male authority figure on the job or in business, right? Because this card can represent the potential for work or business, or it can represent an actual new job or new business, right? So for someone who is on the job front or employed, this could be about maybe dealing with a new boss or a new person in a position of authority on the job. Or it may be that you are a person who's now moving into a new phase in your job or in your employment, and that you are in a position of management. But now the Emperor, remember, can also represent somebody who's heading up his own business. So this could be a matter of trying to create new work or potential business, right, for your self-employment venture. Now this could also be something that is emerging in either a public sense or a social sense, because I tend to look at the suit of Wands as something having to do with the public or something of a social nature. So this could be maybe somebody who's beginning to branch out socially, and I'm going with the idea of the branches that look like they're starting to grow or develop on the club or the baton or the wand. Right, so now if we're talking about this idea about maybe creating more structure, more order, more discipline in one's life, then this card would be suggesting that you have to have a certain amount of passion for it, because sometimes this card can be talking about either a new passion or the rekindling of a prior or a past passion, right? So this could be like getting your passion back, getting the spark back, getting the fire back, getting your mojo back, getting your groove back. Like something happens on Wednesday, because this card represents Wednesday, maybe Wednesday specifically, or maybe throughout the week or the beginning of the week, where we kind of have something inspiring, something motivating, something that gets us to begin to take some kind of action. So here's what's coming to me if I put the card down. So if we go with the idea that maybe in order to create a sense of order, structure, discipline in our lives, we seek the counsel of somebody who's had experience in what it is that we're trying to accomplish. And with that help or that support, it kind of inspires us or motivates us to start taking some kind of action, right? And that's how I would look at the three cards. And so maybe you've been giving some thought as to how you could maybe create this kind of change, this order, this structure, this discipline, right? And maybe you've been giving it a lot of thought, but you haven't been taking any action. The cards are encouraging us to move beyond the contemplation stage, Hermit, and begin to start taking some kind of action. And the fact that it's an ace doesn't mean that the action step that you take has to be this huge, big thing, right? You could ask yourself, what small action would I be willing to take to kind of move the needle forward, right? To start getting the ball rolling, so to speak. So that's how I would look at the top row. So now let's take a look at the next card that represents Thursday, but also the heart of the line. And so here we have the Queen of Swords. So this is the first person card in the deck, or in the reading showing up this week. So the Queen, for me, can represent a woman, right? So at the middle of the line or at the heart of the reading, this could be putting some focus on a woman in particular. So there may be a woman who's playing a central role or part, either on Thursday or in the situation that's being described. Now for me, this could represent a woman who is either single, unmarried, or someone who's going through a separation, a split, or a divorce, because she can represent a divorced woman, a separated woman, right? So if we're talking about, remember now, I talked about one possibility with the Emperor was, someone's husband, right? Someone's spouse. So for a woman in particular, if you identify with the Queen of Swords, this could be talking about you moving through a situation where you are uncoupling from a significant partner in your life, and that would be the Emperor, right? And then that would make sense with the idea about, the Ace of Wands talking about getting your groove back, getting the spark back, getting the fire back, a new sense of inspiration or motivation, a new sense of passion, right? It may come on the heels of this uncoupling process. Now, if you're not a woman and you're not going through a split, separation, or divorce, then symbolically speaking, queens can represent caring and nurturing. And this one, still keeping with the idea, can be talking about separation or divorce. It could be putting some energy into what do we need to separate ourselves from? What do we need to divorce ourselves from this week? Swords, for me, in tarot, can represent a process of elimination. What do we need to cut out? What do we need to remove? What do we need to eliminate? And that could be people, that could be things, that could be conditions, circumstances. And that would make sense if we bring back the Emperor and talking about this idea about gaining control or putting things in a sense of order, creating order. If we go with the idea that the Emperor is talking about discipline, then it could just be about being disciplined in the process of cutting out what you no longer need or want, what is no longer serving you and supporting you. Now remember, we talked about with the Hermit coming after the Emperor about being in a form of support, right? Because what's behind us, the back symbolically can represent support. Right? And as I'm laying the card down and I'm talking about support, interestingly enough to note, there's no card behind the Queen. So this could just be in a space of moving or removing the things that are no longer supporting us because there's nothing behind her. Right? And so now if this is an actual woman, if there are women who are watching this video and what I'm talking about, the Queen of Swords, resonates with you, then what I do is I look to see what card is above the person, because this could represent what's on the person's mind. So this could be a person who's seeking some kind of wisdom or guidance, going with the aspects of the Hermit. And again, it could be seeking wisdom or guidance. And this could be about what did the experience teach you, right? If this is about wisdom gained through experience, what did the experience teach you regarding a situation that has to do with maybe a partner or a spouse, a significant male? Right now, I talked about in one regard, this could be, a partner or a spouse. But if we combine aspects of the Hermit and the Emperor, this could be a father figure. This could represent a man who's older. Remember, this would be father figure, male authority figure who's older. So somebody may not just be going through a separation process with a partner or spouse, but maybe with a father figure, or if not a father, somebody older. It's making me feel about the idea of the expression like divorcing our parents. So somebody may be going through a process where they're divorcing a parent, particularly a father or father figure. But generally speaking, this card could be about what do we need to eliminate, what do we need to cut out, what do we need to separate, ourselves from or divorce ourselves from. You know, the idea of what do we need to do to create space. And as I'm looking at the card now, I'm seeing the idea that for her, she represents, for me, the feng shui queen. And so this may not be about feng shui in actuality, literally, but it could be about what feng shui is about. Feng shui is about the art of placement of material things to free up energy, to make the energy move or flow through our lives easier or better. So with that in mind, it could be a matter of what do we need to do so that the energy in our lives flows much better. And it comes back to here about maybe restructuring things, reordering things, replacing things. So with that in mind, somebody may benefit actually from talking to someone who does feng shui, somebody who's a feng shui practitioner, right? And that would be the hermit, right? Somebody who has wisdom, experience, somebody who can guide us. So that's what I'm seeing with the Queen of Swords. So now let's move on to the next card representing Friday. And here we have, oh, how interesting is this? You can't make this stuff up. So here we have the Empress card, right? And the first thing that I'm going to say is that, isn't it interesting, if I put the card back down for a moment, isn't it interesting that we have the Emperor at the top and the Empress beneath it, right? So we have dual sides of the same coin, right? Because the Empress can represent female authority figures, right? So just like the Emperor could represent a male authority figure, like a father figure, right? This could represent a mother. So there may be something having to do with parents this week for us, right? Because we have both the father and the mother. In another vein, the Empress can be talking about creativity, right? So if we're wanting to create change in our lives this week, how can we be creative in our approach to it, right? It could also be a matter of being patient, you know, letting things grow and develop. That's the number 3 for me. The 3 can represent growth and development, but also about increase and expansion. So now I will say this as I lay the card down. There may be an actuality here where a couple, husband and wife, are contemplating a split, separation, or divorce, and either one or the other is seeking legal counsel. I'm seeing that with the Hermit. The Hermit is above the Queen of Swords and behind the Emperor, right? And interestingly enough, the Empress also knights to the Hermit. So there's something about gaining wisdom or guidance or counsel for either a male authority figure, a female authority figure, or both. And then with the Queen of Swords and the Hermit, I'm seeing this need for space. Remember, I talked about that with the Feng Shui. But she also represents estrangement. Ooh, and just as I said that, another thing's coming to me. But the Hermit is also about a timeout or withdrawal, right? And she's about space. So there's something about maybe a need to create space. But coming back to the estrangement thing, another thing that just came to me is that there may be a person who feels a sense of estrangement or feeling cut off from their parents, and maybe needing to do something around that in terms of gaining some kind of understanding about why that might be, what they could do to change it, or how can they move beyond that. But that's what I'm seeing with the Empress. So now, if we change gears or shift gears and go back to the idea that the Emperor starting the line off is talking about, you know, creating a sense of order, structure, being disciplined, right? Then by Friday, if we start off Monday with that in mind, then by Friday, we're being encouraged to take a look to see what kind of results we have gained through the process, because this is about results and manifestation and giving birth to something. You know, so what did we create? What was created as a result of going through the process, right? You know, because the Empress is all about being productive, right? Isn't that interesting? So we have structure, order, discipline, and productivity, right? So now it's very interesting to note that the Empress is looking towards this card. So let's see what this card is, because she's looking at it, just giving us a directional cue. And so here we have the Page of Swords. So the Page of Swords can represent news or messages. I look at all pages as news or messengers. So now this page looking at the Empress could be about news about being productive. This could be news from a female authority figure. This could be from a female supervisor or boss, if you were talking about work, or, you know, news from a mother or maternal figure. Right? So I find it very interesting to note that looking at the figure, the Page of Swords has his sword drawn, right? As if to go into battle. And then the Empress has a shield, right? So there may be something about wanting to protect oneself. Right? So it could be about wanting to shield or protect oneself from some information. Now, if I go with the idea that I was seeing potential legal matter, like a divorce, separation, then this card for me can represent paperwork around that. I usually look at this as a summons or some kind of subpoena or something like that. And so what's coming to me is I'm hearing the expression in my head like you've been served. So somebody may be served with some kind of legal document or papers. So I'm seeing that. Now if we go with the vertical line, here we have wisdom, guidance, counsel that a woman is thinking about. And then she may receive some news or message or some kind of information as a result of that. Now the only other thing I will say, if we're taking a look at our productivity, the page looking at the Empress, if the Empress represents productivity, then sometimes this card can be about a rival. I'm talking about a rival like a competitor, you know, right? So it could be something that's competing for our attention or our interest. So if we're assessing what it is that we tried to create, we may have to take a look at, were there things that came up that were competing for our attention because the Empress and the Page are looking at each other, right? Or it could be saying too, like you set the intention, like I want to be productive over the course of the weekend, and then this card is saying, oh, hold on a minute. There may be something that competes for your attention, and you may not be as productive as you think, because we have a sword here, then we have the Empress, and then we have a sword following that. So the swords can represent something that goes up and down. So there may be something around a challenge regarding how productive you might want to be, right? It may be, as a matter of fact, that you may want to be productive, but you may have to wait or put something on hold, right? And I'm only saying that because of the order of the cards. And then let's take a look at the last card here. And here we have, ooh, okay, so now here we have another queen. We have the Queen of Coins, right? So again, we have this idea about caring and nurturing, because the queen symbolically represent that. So there's a theme here about caring and nurturing. And that would make sense because we not only do we have the two queens, but we have the Empress too as well, right? So there's a theme here about caring and nurturing. So this could be caring and nurturing for others, or caring and nurturing for ourselves. This card for me is my self-care card, right? One of the things, when it turns up for me, it represents health and nutrition. So if we are cutting out things, if we are eliminating things, you know, doesn't necessarily have to be just in the form of food, right? It could just be about all the things that maybe we deem at this point in our lives unhealthy, right? And as I'm looking at her coin, it's about what are we placing value on? You know, at this point in our lives, what do we value? And is our external, physical, material world an adequate reflection of what it is that we say we value? Right? So that's what I'm seeing with the Queen of Coins. It's about caring, nurturing. What are we placing value on? Are we focusing on the things that we say we value? Right? How are we handling the things that we say we value? And that's, again, her looking at the coin. That's about focus. Right? And holding the coin in her hand. Hand symbolically represent activity. How do we handle, how do we engage with the things that we say we value? How can we be more active regarding the things that we say we value? And as I set the card down, I'm noticing that a lot of the figures this week, Emperor, Queen of Swords, Empress, Queen of Coins, 4 figures are seated, right? So that could be not just only representing people who are in positions of authority, power, control, authority, but also the possibility of your position or our positions this week being somewhat passive. So how can we shift the energy maybe from being more passive to being more active, especially with the Ace of Wands or the Ace of Batons showing up in the reading this week? You know, and if we are wanting to create change in our lives, this card ending the reading would be saying too, we need to focus on what is it that we value. You know, and the idea with the Queens and the Empress, the theme has to be one of caring. Things only change in our lives when we care enough to make the changes. And so, again, food for thought questions. What do you care about this week? What do you value this week? What are you willing to take action on changing this week? And on that note, I will go ahead and end this week's Oracle Outlook. I'm James Himm Mitchell, and as I wrap up, I'd like to thank you for sharing space here with me for this week's reading, and I look forward to sharing the same space with you again in our next video reading together. So until then, I'm hoping that you have a wonderful day, and I'm hoping that you have a wonderful week, one full of wisdom and guidance, one that sheds light on the experiences that you encounter and what you learn from them. Take care.